Typically on this day we start with this slide. Happy Father's Day. As many around the country celebrate this holiday, once again, we find ourselves being challenged by the images and the faithful ways of what it means to be both a man and a father. Here's the problem. In case you have not noticed, I am not a man. Therefore, it is also very difficult for me to be a father. And I have heard many men try to preach on holidays like Mother's Day from the perspective of what it means to be a woman and a mother. And most of the time, they miss the mark. And then the other mark. And then the following mark. And thus I don't want to find myself being guilty of trying to preach from a place that I don't really understand. I mean, I cannot preach about what it means to be a faithful male from a personal perspective, but I do have to say, if there is any week where I could preach a pretty good sermon about what the images of masculinity and maleness might be, this is the week. Because I have spent the last week in conversation with rising high school freshmen, both male and female, talking about a whole day of what we call the marvelous male. While the Created to Be Me camp does have moments when it definitely talks about the physical realities of what it means to be a male, a lot of the camp actually focuses about the stereotypes surrounding the ideas of what it means to be masculine. As the campers talk about the good and bad aspects of what it means to be male, I have found that the small groups quickly discover that men who are in healthy relationships with their bodies, their emotions, their minds, their selves, with others around them, and with God do not actually fit into what society deems as a powerful, masculine image. Last week, we heard the story of Saul's leadership being rejected by God. The reality is Saul's society did not get better. In fact, his life and world seemed to get much worse, as we saw on the video today. He had chosen to listen to the people instead of God. And he forgot that people are quick to change their minds and groupthink in another direction. And what is that new direction? The younger, the kinder, the warrior, legend, new rising star, David. That young, sensitive shepherd guy who plays beautiful music, writes poetry, dances, and defeats Goliath. And while later, as we continue our journey, we will see that David does have moments when he also forgets to put God's will first. And we will hear the stories of those consequences. But in today's scripture and story, David is still on the uphill movement. He is young and vulnerable and probably a bit reckless, as a lot of times young people are, without having a family to answer to and an understanding of real consequences. He has spare time to establish relationship with those friends like Jonathan, who will be with him for life. He has been selected already by God, but he is what we would call probably in his grooming stage. And while the women in the story celebrated David as a warrior, those who actually knew him as a good friend who needed help, a musician, a poet, a simple shepherd, just like our good shepherd, Jesus. David really, if you think about it, didn't fit the expectations of what was supposed to be a king. I mean, who does? That's the point where I really actually find that I have sympathy for Saul. He does not seem that different from many of the men that I've encountered. Many of those men feel lots of pressure from different directions. They are given certain roles of leadership by those higher in power. They are told that they must create something new. And when they all of a sudden start to realize that they may fail and not live up to the expectations, that they have forgotten to put the real quality relationships like God first, it is easy to get caught up in the images and expectations of the world and feel like you are failing. Saul, in his mind, had gained power and worth, and he was starting to lose that power, and therefore, as many people do, lose his self-esteem and worth. And it makes it so easy to lose perspective. It's easy for people to start to feel insecure and jealous. It is easy to try to then gain that power back by living into unhealthy and manipulative relationships because you feel powerless. When you hear that someone who seems to have more going for them is knocking on your door to take the things that you've established to make you feel like you have self-worth, you can understand why all of a sudden you start to get a little crazy. I mean, most of us know, even our children know, that the bullies of the world were usually the ones who originally felt bullied. And so you hear Saul talking to himself as he begins to unravel his anger at those women who think David is killed more than him. His unwillingness to admit that maybe instead of calling someone else to come forward to defeat Goliath, maybe he should have come forward himself. All of a sudden looking around in his own household, wondering why David was liked so much more by his kids. I mean, he couldn't help that he was a busy man trying to help all the tribes. He didn't have extra time to spend with his kids. He didn't have time to be young and carefree and sit with a bunch of sheep, learning how to play the lyre. His enemies were at every turn. He was trying to answer to these ongoing pressures that we all feel, and he was failing, and God had rejected him. And so I begin to wonder for Saul, where is Saul's grace? Where is Saul's redemption? Where is God's understanding for Saul? And as I thought about this, though, I came to another element. Where was Saul's remorse? Real remorse. Remorse that finally required him to take a step back and really let go and admit that God is the one with the power. The type of remorse that comes when we must stand in front of the mirror and face the darkest truth in who we are in ourselves and really let the waters that flow through baptism heal our weaknesses and failures. The type of remorse that comes when we must actually just take a rest and Sabbath and reconciliation. Did Saul engage at any point in this story in that type of deep confession to reconcile himself and his failures to God? No. If you keep reading the story, Saul just keeps pushing forward. He keeps making all the wrong moves, trusting all the wrong people, and creating even more distrust, drama, and hardship. He is a bully and a train wreck. And Jonathan and all of Saul's other children don't have Hallmark cards that say, "Dad, I love you, but you need to get in touch with your emotional side and show remorse." Or, "Dad, just stop and take time to talk to God, please." Because remorse does not look like a powerful masculine trait. Apologizing, being sensitive, showing weakness, getting old, and sharing your feelings based on what I heard from the rising freshmen this week are not still seen as society as masculine traits. It looks like even though there have been thousands of years, stereotypes and images sometimes remain. And the more they remain, the harder they are to change and shift. So I ask, what can we learn from the story we've heard today? Well, if those rising freshmen were standing still in front of me, I would hope that they would learn that faithful relationships are relationships with God at the center. And when we really put God at the center and allow ourselves to be vulnerable with that, then we will have much healthier relationships in all the different types of relationships we have. Because when we lose the ability to have healthy relationships first with God, then we ultimately lose sight of other healthy relationships. Anyone who has studied the shifts over the church over the past 20 years knows the importance of men and fathers in leading children and youth to truly know Christ. There is authority that is found for children and youth that know, experience, and witness real, authentic, vulnerable, emotional faith from male role models in a positive way. Many of our children do not have quality male role models in this world. Most of our children do not have quality male faith role models. You see, the problem is that the stereotypes around fatherhood and manhood seem to reflect more of the type of choices, the unhealthy choices that were being made by Saul, and less of the faithful choices that reflect, at least in this stage, the positive aspects of David and even Jonathan. The strained relationships like the one that Saul had with his son Jonathan, those are the type of relationships that people seem to make when they don't recognize God at the center and give themselves that sense of peace. Instead, I know many men who feel like they need to be the strongest in the room, or the one who needs to always be the leader and the follower, not recognizing that we know God in a way that teaches us to be the servant and not the one who is served. I know that nothing I'm telling you is new information today. Yet as I heard the voices of those rising high school freshmen this week, it was sad. I was saddened by the same images of what it means to be seen by society as a male of worth has not really altered. In fact, because it's been here for so long, it may be stronger in a world, especially in a world where there are lots of absent fathers and not a lot of positive male images. So those of you men in this room, on this Father's Day, I need you to know that you are desperately needed. Good men are needed. My colleague Randy tells a story about how the men in his church wanted to meet with the boys in his youth group. They told him they wanted to meet with them to teach him how to be real men. At first, he was a little concerned and a little weary about what that might mean. But the men, however, did not actually come to talk down. They actually came in with these high school boys to build relationships and to teach them just some of the basic nuances that are helpful when facing a tough society. They taught them things like how to have a quality handshake and how to really treat other people with respect. And these boys, Randy said, were hungry for it. I think our society is hungry for good men and good fathers. And may I celebrate that those of you in this place are a rare jewel. Just as I celebrated the nuances of what it means to be a quality woman of faith on Mother's Day, I celebrate the nuances of what it really means to be a quality man of faith on this Father's Day. And I apologize and worry about those who have suffered like Saul, those who try to live up to human standards and images. And I celebrate those who have found your goodness in God and your salvation in His Son, Jesus Christ. And like I said, I do not know what it feels like to be a man, but I do have how to be a faithful person. And a faithful person means you love your faith. You love this community. You love your children. You love others' children. You love your strong women. You love your friends. You love Christ. You love God. And you have the ability to show remorse, to stop, and then to recollect and reconcile and move forward in this difficult world with God's Spirit. The world has many men who run in fear. They run in fear, and many people who run in fear. They try to live up to unhealthy images of what it means to be a female or male. They try to take control to find their power. And so my prayer on this Father's Day, for those men who do not know God in a way that is truly faithful, my prayer is that these men find remorse, find reconciliation, and ultimately find a way, as we all aim to do, to put God at our center.